puntos de vista y las opiniones expresadas en este programa son de los participantes y no reflejan necesariamente las opiniones de BronxNet o sus colaboradores.
All right, everyone, are we on? Do I have to press something here? Can everyone hear me? We're good?
That's just for the TA.
We're good. Okay, so this is for the TV. So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to our panel on transforming school culture we're using our restorative justice to transform your school culture, really to make it a different place, to take it from being a alienating institution to most of the kids and many of the staff, and making it into a caring community. So I am Matthew Goulden. I am the director of one of New York City's pilot projects in restorative justice practices, and I have 25 schools throughout the city, and 6 of them are mentor schools who've been successfully doing restorative practices and changing their school culture. Not just lowering suspensions, but changing how people interact overall. So each of us will talk for 4 or 5 minutes. There's 4 of us, have one more school leader on the way, and then we will go into questions. At the end, we'll take questions as much as possible. But since we have only about 45 minutes, but we're going to get started right about now. So our first panelist will be, let's just go around and everyone introduce ourselves, okay? Young lady? Well, we have to use this.
Hi, my name is Taeko. I'm the principal at Lyons Community School.
Good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Quintana. I'm the principal at Bronxdale High School in the Bronx.
Good afternoon. My name is Brady Smith. I'm the principal co-director at the James Baldwin School.
And hi, my name is Lara Evangelista, and I'm the principal of the Flushing International High School in Flushing, Queens.
And you, my dear, are our first speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we started on this whole journey and why we decided to start this work at our school. As I said, I'm from the Flushing International High School. We serve recent immigrants who are new learners of English at our school, and we have 2 dominant language populations in our school. About half of our students are Spanish-speaking from a diverse Spanish-speaking community, lots of different countries represented, and then the other half are Chinese-speaking. So we have 2 very large language groups. And we opened in 2004. We were always a small school. We work with instructional teams. We provide a lot of support for students. So our goal has always been to create a small, caring school community where students really felt that they belonged from when we opened. And we did that. We were successful with that in the classroom. Students felt generally safe with us. We didn't really have major issues ongoing. But about 4 to 5 years after we opened in 2009, an incident really took us all aback. And we had a very violent incident that happened between our Chinese-speaking community and our Spanish-speaking community outside of our school, where basically the 2 groups beat each other with sticks. It involved the police. There were a lot of suspensions involved, and it really kind of shook our community to the core because we kept asking ourselves, how could this happen? We know our students. We're a small community. We work to make sure everybody belongs. We work to let them get to know each other. And we realized after these suspensions, things weren't really getting any better. The tensions continued. There were follow-up incidents. And we started asking ourselves, we have a very student-centered focus in the classroom and in our educational model, but we didn't really have a student-centered focus when it came to discipline. We had all this progressive work that was happening in the classroom, but we weren't really progressive when it came to discipline. We were falling back on the old models of discipline. And so we started to do some research and are working with our social worker and our counselors. They started to connect with some other communities that were experimenting with restorative justice. And we decided to try a pilot of that work with some teachers and students who were interested, and some incidents that happened that we thought we could apply to this. And that was really how we got started and why we got started. Through that pilot, that was in 2010, the incident was in 2009, people started seeing that this actually was more effective with many students. And we started to develop more buy-in for the whole community. I'm going to pass it on to Tyrone, I believe, is next, who's going to talk a little bit about what that rollout looks like or can look like in a community.
We're talking very, very disciplined speaker. First, 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Not bad on a 5-minute. I didn't even get to say 1 minute. Okay, whatever. Tyrone, please introduce yourself to everyone and then tell your story.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyrone Paulin. I'm from Robert A. Van Wyck Middle School 217. It's in Queens. We have roughly close to 1,700 students. It's a Title I school. So we have students that come from challenging environments. Before I get started, are there any deans here? I'm one of 4 deans in the building. Are there any deans here? Okay. All right. So a couple of deans. About a couple of years ago, 2013, the principal came to me and said, you need to go to this conference. It was an NYU disproportionality, you went to that? Disproportionality of African American student suspensions. And I was like, why? Why are you selecting our school to go to this conference? Well, he said that our school was ranked top 3 suspensions in the district. We had a lot of suspensions. And I, as a dean, I thought nothing of it because to me, my mindset before I became a dean was that certain students were problems. And the deans removed the problems so teachers can teach and the classroom environment could be safe, quote unquote. So that was my mindset going in. And I fully loved that mindset. I enjoyed that mindset. So before, I'll give a little backstory, okay? Before I went to this NYU conference, I loved being the stereotypical dean. Loved it. Enjoyed it. When I taught, and I'm like, why are these kids in the hallway? Why is this student being so disrespectful? Who's doing something about this? If I ever became a dean, I never wanted to be a dean. I taught math, and I love teaching math. I love the environment that was created in my classroom. I've always had the most difficult students, so it was definitely fun, quote unquote, to be a teacher. And I told this story in the last presentation. When I became a dean, I took on this persona as like the gunslinger. I wanted to get every student that was causing problems in our school, and our suspensions were high. True story. There was one student that was deemed the most difficult student in the building. I said, yeah, I'll take her. Bring her on my floor. So she was my target. And I feel bad about this. Back then, before they modified the discipline code, we had a B34, persistent level 3 behavior, right? A dean's go-to. Because I'll talk a little about the language. B21 in the code is defiance, Sit down there? No. Okay, B21. So I use it to my advantage. And this one student who was suspended so many times, by me and other deans, I wanted to set the tone. So this student, she refused to go to detention. She cursed some teacher out. Go to detention. She said no. I recorded it, legal. I want you to take off your scarf. She said no. I recorded it. So she did something else. So I was able to get a superintendent suspension based on persistent level 3 behavior. And then I requested 30 days. So what I did was, what deans do when they go to supers, right? They collect every piece of evidence to show how detrimental having this student in the building is, how it impacts the classroom environment, how this student endangers this person, that person, the whole community. And you sell it. You sell it. And I won. And I felt victorious because for 30 days, this student was not in the building. And that was my success story right there. And I was the champion of the people. Teachers loved me. Yeah, Paulie, yes! So after a while, before I went to the NYU conference, I wasn't aware of the damage that I was causing. And when I had the conversations with people that were there, I realized that I was causing more harm than good. Because these students, they're ostracized. So they're labeled. So when they get suspended, right, you're removing a student, you're not moving a problem. You're moving a student, a person. How would that student re-enter the community? So I started to be conflicted. And then at that time, I went to a safety meeting, and a lot of safety meetings, they say the same thing. But towards the end of it, I heard something about restorative justice, and it was a TED Talk, and it was interesting. And there was an opportunity to go to a training session offered by Morningside, and it was amazing. It was in the summertime. All the deans went. It was amazing. It was my eyes opened, and I said, I can't believe that I was causing so much harm to these students and to overall the school community. I'm not helping. 1 minute? Okay. So fast forward, met with Matt, and he introduced advisories, and we were able to introduce the idea of community within a classroom, and then that extended to the whole floor, and then off to the whole school. We first started with 6th grade, and then the next year was 7th grade, and then we have 6th, 7th, 8th this year. And I'm going to tell you, it's an amazing, amazing experience. And teachers are buying into it, the ones that actually believe in it. And it is a tough sell, because it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes time. And I tell them, don't think of the restorative piece, because that is the buzzword that is deemed negative by a lot of people. What it is, it's relationships. It's building relationships. And through relationships, that's when you make change. And my floor, we practice community. We're a family. We're a family. And it's so powerful. 30 seconds. It's so powerful. I was telling a story. Our school had visitors. We talk about restorative practices. So I was telling them, yeah, my floor is this. Yeah, they believe in it. There was a fight. So it's the jinx. You don't ever talk about how good things are in school. So the jinx happened, and then the fight occurred between self-contained students, 7th grade, on the same floor. Why now? So I had to put it in practice. The practice is normally, right, is a fight, school safety gets involved, they separate them, they escort them to the dean or whomever, right? I said, no. I told school safety, no. I want them to walk to me unescorted. Boys, I am not dealing with this now. My hands are crossed, my fingers are crossed. I'm like, please let this work, please let it work. And they came to me, not a problem. They didn't say anything. I talked about how they are disappointing the family. You're disappointing the community. The community, we're a family and this is happening. We'll deal with this later, or you will deal with it later. And they joined our circle, didn't speak, but they sat there respectfully. And if that could be done with self-contained students that come from challenge, one student, one is the blood. Self-contained students, 7th grade, if you plant the seeds, something will develop. And it did.
Gotta love it.
Knock on some wood. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. And I think Matt and I think Morningside, for all your guidance and your help, the no excuses. It's been a great ride so far, and we look forward to continuing that ride. And I look forward to hearing your stories.
All right.
He's a good guy.
You will, bro.
Thank you.
No problem, but nice stories, right? Could not put it. And this is really something about restorative justice. You can't put a cap on the time. You have to, in your school, your principal has to buy into, this is going to take time because you're really dealing with people, like he's saying. You're really dealing with people, so it can't be, let's get the two of you together, apologize. Okay, it's over, that was the mediation, goodbye. I got more things to do, there's more fires to put out in 211 and in 413 and all of that. No, this is going to take time. Okay? All right, just had to get that out. We're gonna move to Taiko as our next speaker.
Hi, I'm Taiko. I'm going to talk, I guess, about some of the things that are really, we are in our 11th year as a school. We're 6 through 12. We're also about 90% students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, similar population to a lot of schools, which is one of the reasons a lot of people come to visit our school to see the work that we're doing. I think the thing we've really been focusing on is student-led restorative justice practices. When we opened the school, we had 6th and 9th grade. Our staff was really on board with it. We do all of our hiring practices using circles and doing all of this kind of work. Our staff meetings work this way. So it was kind of ingrained in our adult culture. But the kids kind of were like, you have to say things like that. You're the principal or you're the adult. Of course you have to say that that kid is really nice. You know, like that whole idea that we're paid to do it. You know, if we were out in the street, Taiko, you would not be saying that. Okay, point taken. Really what happened, what really changed is when our first few groups of middle schoolers became our high schoolers, and they had been doing this work all along. And they were the ones getting the younger people and the new students to buy into it, that's what fundamentally shifted the culture in our school. And I share one story as second year of the school, a young woman in our school who had already been to 2 other high schools came to us. We built a pretty strong relationship early on. She actually now works at our school as a youth advocate. Came and said a young man, her friend, had gotten arrested last night for stealing a cell phone, and would I talk to him? And I was like, ooh, I don't know. I don't have a relationship with him at all. Every time I look at him, he kind of looks away. And I talked to him, and I said, we really want to send someone to you, send someone with you when you go to court. And that changed everything. And he was like, wait, what? You're not mad at me? I was like, no, I just want to understand what's going on. I think it'll be much more effective if someone from our staff goes along with your mom to kind of show the support and so you guys understand the legal system. And then he went and told all of his friends, and within 2 weeks I had all these requests to go to court with kids who had been arrested. But it basically changed the culture of our school, right? Because it was kids telling other kids that we were worth the trust. Because what we have to remember is there's a really good reason why young, especially black and brown children, do not trust authorities and do not trust schools. It's because we've been set up to be adversarial to them. And so when you can kind of come in and say, we are part of this official system, we need to record things, we're going to write up things when we need to, but that we also are on your side and we want to see things from your perspective, then that allows you to have these access points that you never had before. And so we found that the more we get the young people involved in doing the work, that they're the ones who either are best at doing the work, which is often the case, but when you do need that kind of adult presence to be there to do it, that they help the young people trust that we may be on their side in doing the work. And so that involves working with the parents, right? So often it's the students who will come and say, my parents really need a mediation with that other set of parents. You know, like we'll do the mediation between the 2 kids and they'll be fine and they had the fight after school, but they're ready to be in school. But both of the other parents are like, that other kid needs to be arrested because this went down and it's unsafe and there's bullying going on in your community. And so we often have the kids say, please, can you reach out to my mom and tell her that she needs to come in for a mediation? And those are the things that change the overall community, and we get the parents in, and those are the things that are happening. I'm going to try and keep it really brief. I'm going to pass it on.
Thank you, Taiko. Q, you're up.
Thank you. So we're similar schools and similar reasons for starting the work that we did. Like Laura, we learned that after suspensions, things were just not getting any better. Our students, thought we were doing what was progressive in classrooms, really teaching kids to work together, but we weren't doing that out in the hallways and the social spaces or when there was harm that was in the building. And so we wanted to move away from those punitive practices to something that was more restorative and was tied to accountability in a very different way, and that would teach kids things that would benefit them later on. So that happened, looked a lot like the processes that you've heard across the board, and we would say that we were in a place where we were becoming a pretty stable restorative school. Not great, not there yet, always have lots of issues to deal with and learning to do, but we were okay. And then we got okay and got comfortable with it. And so the piece I wanted to mention most is we focused on two different aspects of how we were going to roll out restorative. One was that everybody did the work. It wasn't just a dean, it wasn't just a student support team, everybody did. The other piece was that we weren't going to use one practice. There isn't a package, there isn't a program. It's really about developing something that matches your school community that is made up of multiple practices. What happened, unfortunately, though, is once you get into it, and something that you heard Matthew say earlier is time is the biggest factor in all of this. Creating the time for these processes to be rolled out, creating the time to train everybody, and everybody means school aides and secretaries and folks like that too, creating the time to address the behavior repeatedly. Not just the day that it happens, but the check-in a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later. All of that takes time. Time when folks are coming into your building for the first time, all of that, right? And so some of the pieces that for us, the multi-pronged approach included restorative conferences initially, then we built in circles and mediation. We found that peer mediation was actually more successful for us, so we built that in. We brought in youth court, and we used circles, like Teiko said, for everything, for team meetings, for parent meetings, for conferences, for orientations. Circles are used for everything because it's part of building community as much as it is for addressing harm. What ended up happening, though, was at some point, people get exhausted and get into habits, and so the folks that generally would respond to incidents initially would just sort of take it on. And I got this. And so then it became behind closed doors, one person again, I got you, I'm the one buying you food, I'm the one who understands you. And that changes what we were trying to create with a genuine distributed approach to leadership guidance and support. And the other part of it was that we fell into what was easy. And so we did these sort of circles light. Or we did sort of, our own version of conferences instead of really honoring the protocols and really going through that process as lengthy as it is. And we found that that wasn't working for us. And so we had to take a step back and genuinely do assessments that included surveys and things, but mostly it was really honest conversations about what is the state of the restorative school and how do we get to where we want to be. And that meant really creating that vision piece again and talking about what we valued. And what we value, like Teiko said, is student voice, student self-advocacy, student leadership. And so we went back to those practices that were about that. And so made sure that youth court didn't fall by the wayside because that one is important to us. In fact, they were presenting today, which is wonderful. We went back to making sure that our peer mediation program was really strong because if we're talking about not having just to put out fires, but creating a school where fires don't happen in the first place, kids do that. They create those relationships that create that community where kids feel welcome and have someone to go to that doesn't have to be a grown-up because sometimes we're too weird for them anyway. So they have each other for those pieces. We had to go back to what was important to us. And if peer mediation was one of those, they needed coaching just as much as we did for circles. And so we brought in people to coach them. We created a club as well as the actual peer mediation. So they have multiple opportunities to practice what they're doing. They presented today too. And so really exciting to have them come back and to have those programs really come to fruition. And that's what we're focusing on, is making sure that those stay. The other part of it was making sure that it wasn't one person taking things on. We had to build up our advisors again, create an advisory committee, rebuild that restorative committee that we'd had. Rebuild that restorative committee and get to a point where we could really just make sure that if we say this is who we are and what we're doing, then it is who we are and what we're doing.
All right. Thank you. So there is an intentional arc, in case you haven't noticed already, from we're not lined up properly, but from sort of like the seminal moment of or event that makes a school shift, to individuals who shift their mindsets, to challenges that have occurred as schools continue to implement these practices. The James Baldwin School was founded in 2005. It was founded by a group of teachers, and embedded in the Genesis documents are restorative practices. So Fairness Committee, for example, was one of the first things on our menu of practices. In fact, hi, Abby, our Fairness Committee co-facilitator, is in the back. It's always fun to look out and see that. And several students who just presented from the Student Advisory Council from our building. There's an arm there. Who's that? Noah, how you doing? All right. And so student voice is very present and still very present. But in the 12 years of the school's existence since 2005, remember, started by teachers with a philosophy that was intentionally different than a traditional approach, and a lot of the RJ practices embedded that may not have even had names. I mean, it's almost like pre-capital R, capital J work that was happening. And so in 12 years, there have been a lot of things that have occurred that have made it challenging to continue those practices. Leadership changes, for example, and staffing changes. I don't think there's necessarily mission drift. We're very attentive to our mission and to our core values, and those are very present in our practices, and those are reviewed at our retreats. So we've got mechanisms in place to make sure that the mission and the core value of the school are present throughout, but a drift perhaps in philosophy, right? And as you move away from all of the origin pieces, as you replace founding staff with new hires, what can occur is you can find yourself in a place you didn't anticipate, and sometimes that place is further away from the core beliefs around restorative practices. And to then realign to those is one of the challenges that I think Q tapped into that as well. We face as we continue to take this approach. It takes a lot of time. There's been shifting enrollment. We are a full transfer school at the James Baldwin School, and so students come and go a little faster than they do in a 9 to 12 or a 6 to 12. So our opportunity to transform their vision of school and of discipline is limited by time. Average student is with us for 3 terms. And so we want them to understand this way of thinking about school and thinking about the world and thinking about justice, but we don't have a lot of time to do maybe some of the deeper work. And so we have to do it quickly. And so we spend a lot of our time and energy on sort of the Tier 1 community building practices and bringing students into our community. We talk more about transformative justice than restorative, because embedded in the definition of restorative is that you have a community to restore to. But again, our mobility of students, they come and go so quickly that it's hard for us to say, we don't feel necessarily confident or comfortable saying we have an established community. Rather, we have an opportunity for students to come to us and transform. And so we have come to that place of where we talk about transformative justice. Another challenge is that we have very democratic decision-making and consensus-aligned decision-making processes. I think that's essential when you're doing these practices, that all voices are heard, but it can make making decisions painfully slow sometimes. And so ultimately I think the decisions are better. There's no doubt in my mind about that, but there are some challenges that might be more neatly addressed with a snap decision. And we don't generally make snap decisions. And so trying to find that balance of existing within this Department of Education bureaucracy, this system that exerts external pressures to be a traditional leader, to implement traditional discipline, to make problems go away, at least for now, as opposed to address problems in ways that really can be transformative and lead in ways that are non-traditional, and make decisions in ways that really account for all voices, all constituents, all people who have skin in that game. And so, we've seen it over the course of the evolution of the school, and I think that we've faced some challenges, and we always will, and we continue to face those challenges. How did I do?
Perfectly timed. 4:40.
All right.
Not bad at all. All righty, so we will reset, and I will start. So what I'm going to do is share with you, I've taken from working with all of these principals and deans over the years, and from being at Eastside Community High School, where I was the dean and worked to transform the culture before I even heard of the words restorative justice, is try and capsulize some essences of how you do this process. So I'm going to run through them now. You can get a copy of this bullet point, and Lara and Brady, I think, have some takeaways for you as well. And yeah, so most everybody's got stuff, so you can come up here at the end and get it. But I say there are three big ideas that I don't hear people talking about in the restorative justice community that really underlie things. So the first one is that restorative justice is fixing the kids. No. You want to teach the kids how to deal with conflict. You want to teach students 12 years old and 14 and 16 how to deal with conflict, how to deal with sadness, how to deal with depression, how to deal with frustration. Of course, social skills excellent. But everyone in that school building must change. If you're just using it as a discipline procedure to get your suspensions down because that's what the superintendent says, or you're gonna get some suspensions down, but you're not gonna change the fundamental nature of the community. So everyone's gotta change. All the relationships, how adults and kids relate to each other, how the adults relate to each other, all of that. That's the first idea. It's not just fixing the kids, everyone must change. The second is, in order to educate the whole child, and we've been talking about educating the whole child forever, it's not just making sure you still have gym and dance and music, although that's important, but it's also tending to the social emotional development of our youth. Because it's like everyone complains, oh, the junior highs complain about the elementary schools, and the high schools complain about the junior highs. Oh, they don't know how to teach. The kids are 3 years behind in math, and they're 2 years behind in reading and all of this. And that's true, because living in a racist, sexist, classist America will get you there. And so they come in with all of these deficits, and they also come in with social emotional. Trauma, which is what this conference is about, is knocking them out and is freezing their emotional development. So we have to make this a place, our school building, that's different, fundamentally different from the outside. So you have to give 50% of your time and energy and effort to the social emotional development. And I know that sounds crazy, but these guys have been working on it, even though they get pressure from the top to perform, academic, because somebody upstairs doesn't really get it. That's the second idea, 50-50 split. The third idea is that the basis to really set yourself up for successful restorative practices, you have to do one thing. Make a culture of self-reflection in your building. If everyone is looking at themselves first and not blaming other people, because you go in any building, oh, the teachers are complaining about the kids are complaining about the teachers, the principal's complaining about the teachers and the kids and their families. Hello, you're supposed to be here to serve the community. You're supposed to care about people. You're supposed to, this is what your job is. So if the principal moves with that vision about we are not going to blame anybody here. Before you talk about anybody else, talk about yourself. Look in the mirror. What did I do to make this situation happen? And how can I fix that? What are we asking the kids for? What is restorative justice? Helps work with someone to help them see their part in it, take responsibility for that, and make amends. Well, if everyone's doing it, when you get a 12-year-old who said this and that to the teacher, and the teacher who responded and freaked out or did something that triggered the kid, if the principal's doing it, if everyone's doing it, then you're setting yourself up for success. I'm not doing well on time. I will hold myself minimally accountable. But anyhow, so those are the three ideas. Then there's 5 essential building blocks that I talk about. 1, you got to create a vision. 2, you have to mobilize your community. You have to have an organizing strategy for how you're going to go ahead and deal with getting everyone on board. You have to plan. What do you want after the first year? What do you want after the second year? How do you want things to go after the next year? Third, you have to walk the talk. And we've mentioned it. All of these people here walk the talk. If they need to be self-reflective and if someone criticizes them, they're open to it. They check themselves. They apologize when necessary. Then you're going to move ahead. Third, fourth, you have to do, as many people said, Q in particular, you have to infuse restorative practices and structures within the daily life of the school. You have your department meetings in circle, stuff like that. You make enough time in Tyrone's schedule that when he has to do a restorative conference or a restorative circle and bring in parents, it's not like you've got to be down in the cafeteria. No, another dean will cover for him because he's there, and he needs 2 periods to get this done because there are 8 people involved, and each one has to be heard. So you infuse it into the daily life. And finally, you have to get common language in your school about what restorative practices mean. You have to get common, clear behavioral expectations for everybody, student to student, student to staff, staff to student, and staff to staff. So they're not fighting. You have to be role models again, and then you have to have clear protocols like Hugh was mentioning. How do you respond? It's clear. Everyone gets it. No one can say, oh, that restorative justice, there's no consequences. No, here's the clear protocol. So we are done with our presentations. We are open for the next 10 minutes or so, and if people want to stay after, you can just be on the lunch line a little bit late, but you could hear us respond to your questions. So we are open now to questions. Do we need everyone to have this, Joe? No. Okay, so just try to talk loud as you can be. Go, brother.
Tyrone, you spoke about like how the teachers loved you when you were that like classic dean. Like, can you talk a little bit about the transition to not being that sort of classic dean and how the teachers are feeling about that and the perhaps missteps along the way that teachers calling you out for not doing your job?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mention that because the deans had a conversation with staff, no admin, and I wasn't so loved. Talked about restorative practices and how it was, at the time of the meeting, we talked, I think it was the same time that DOE changed a lot of the policies and the codes. So, you know, we probably presented it wrong. You know, you have deans saying that, well, you know, we're doing this, it's a paradigm shift and we're going to change the way we do things, and it's because we have to. Not, you know, not because it's something that we should be doing. So that kind of created a conflict in the building, to be honest with you. You had, you know, the late adopters, and you had those that did not believe in it at all. And it's been a struggle. There has been pushback. You know, a large school has been pushback, and you know, it's a lot of emotion involved. So, you know, the restorative piece, it's relationship building, so it takes time. And whereas a suspension is quick and immediate, you know, and you have people that feel wronged in certain incidents, and they want justice right away. So what we have been doing is just showing them data. You know, showing them data, showing them that, you know, if there is time taken into building a relationship with a student, that there could be an impact, positive impact in your classroom. That takes time. You know, it takes an open mind. And there have been some mistakes. I think one mistake that we made is telling teachers that they have to do it. Showing them that you know, this is something that you're not doing, and maybe you're creating a problem. And teachers get defensive. You know, we have a new curriculum, and you know, it's a lot of pressure they feel. And this is something that, you know, they're not supposed to do, quote unquote, because they're just supposed to be teaching math, science, English, whatever the topic is. So this is something they feel that they should not be doing. This is your job. So going back, I think we should have discussed the problems that we're facing, and seeing that the suspensions aren't working because the same students, roughly 3% of the population, are the ones creating the problems. What can we do? Because this is not working clearly. So what's the other option? And maybe maybe the response would have been different.
All righty. Other questions? Brother over here. Just speak loud, please, okay?
My name is Gary, and I'm trying to figure out how I could, I guess, implement restorative justice into their community. Like taking it a little bit out of school. They spend, maybe 8 hours in school, but they, the rest of the time they're either in a different, they're at a different community. So how do we help, I guess, spread restorative justice, outside of school?
Right. Who'd like to take that question?
Again, I think the more students are doing it in school, the more likely they are to pull it out into their own community. So often it's bringing in people, so like when there are things happening between two different schools, or when, and a lot of it is in the classes that we run, the RJ classes, the kids are able to talk about their own experiences. We also have an after-school group that meets, and like we'll often have kids who've had conflicts with like the police or all these other things outside, and they'll bring it back, and then we'll try and bring in those community members into the thing. But, our kids are here, and they could definitely talk about that experience. But kids are even doing it with their siblings or in their own homes. I mean, that again, the more comfortable they feel with it and the more they're taking ownership of it in the school, the easier it is for them to see their own ability to do it in other places. So again, I think the more we step back, the more we let them talk about what the issues are. We've also done a lot of curricular work. So like our 9th graders do an entire quarter of studying RJ as a curricular piece. So they study the truth and reconciliation work, they study Rwanda, then they study court cases that are happening in the United States. And all of that is out of the context of the school and the school, the traditional school to prison pipeline kind of arc. And that helps them, I think. And our students do performance-based assessment tasks. And a lot of those, they're taking those topics and studying them there, and about how these impacts of gentrification and around prison reform are all connected to the work they're doing outside. And then I guess the political work, right? So all of this stuff around the policies that are happening in the DOE and our need as young people to get together and try and combat those, I think, is the other place where we've seen a lot of it.
Great. Questions? All the way in the back. I'll come to you next.
My name is Tom, and I would like to know the difference between transformative and restorative. What the approaches are same or different? And the second question is that do you have any funds from government for this transformative justice or restorative justice?
Who'd like to take it? First question, difference between transformative and restorative justice.
Oh, funds.
Second one is, do you have any funds from government?
But the answer to the first question is, this is a project of the Department of Education, New York City. So each school gets money, and they get, yeah, gets
No.
no, right.
The furthest along get no money.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
There you go.
That's I'm working with 25 schools. These 5 schools are getting very little or nothing, depending on the particularities. But the 20 other schools get somebody placed in the school from a community-based organization, like the leadership program, Ramapo for Children, etc. So that, and they get money to let people go to trainings and stuff like that. If you want to say more on this question, and then let's go transformative and restorative.
So in terms of the funding, there are grants you can apply to help fund any of these initiatives that you want to put in place. They're often very tiny grants, but the reality is, and most of us I think started that way, you can start without having any funding that is provided, and now that we're further along, we're not part of that 20 that get those funds. But there is an opportunity to create that environment in your school without it. It's about changing the way people think and about the relationships people have with kids, and you can start doing that for free. Morningside training, if you want to get trained on circles, is free. In fact, teachers get paid a training rate to do it. And so it's something that is available, and once you do it, it comes with coaching, which is crucial. Anytime you do have funds available and you can pay for extra coaching, that's always really helpful to have someone who supports implementation. There are opportunities. We've had our staff CPS trained, collaborative problem solving, which gave us an opportunity to have language to talk through how kids, what skills students may have or why they exhibit behaviors. It gave us common language. That for us was free, right? And so take advantage advantage of opportunities to be trained for free, but what you build in your school, the time it took for us to decide who we want to be, we allocated that. We allocated the time and the money for that. We created, each of us have some sort of a restorative someone in your school that is not a position that exists in the DOE that we created, right? And so there's an opportunity when you say, this is what I value and what I want to do, you'll allocate the time and funds for what you value and want to do.
A few words about the restorative and transformative piece that you asked, the first part of your question. And first of all, I'll give an opinion, my idea of it, but I know there are lots of ideas about it. So I encourage you to find the one that resonates for you. But so in our own school, the restorative implies that you have a community that is high functioning and just to begin with, that you are then restoring them to. We've never felt confident saying that that's the case in our school. And so rather what we're trying to do is work as a community, young and adult, to transform it into the community we want it to be. I think the macrocosm of the state, the nation, the world is also such that what I see, what most of the people I work with in my community, young and adults see, is not what we want. It's not the society that we would like to live in. And so restoring to some vision of a society that is not one we share makes no sense. And so as a microcosm, as a school, as a macrocosm, as a country or a planet, I think we have to transform and not just restore.
Absolutely. Great, great, great. Sister in the back. Yes.
Have you seen this done in elementary school, or is it not for learning?
Absolutely. So
Go right
I
ahead.
feel like I've talked a lot, but yes. So firsthand, I worked K-12 before I became principal of high school, so yes, saw it. And it starts with morning meetings and opportunities to talk about how we're feeling and teaching kids how to talk to one another. And even if you go to the standards, the first sets of standards from kindergarten on up are about interrelating, right? And it starts with small groups and becomes bigger. And so it starts with that and with being able to really talk about how I feel. And a lot of schools have pulled in programs to help them do that. So they create language around how we talk about how we feel. But it's also teaching kids to use statements that are about my responsibility, those I statements or sentence starters that may begin like that. We've seen that done in elementary schools. A lot of it happens through play, but then it is also about the way teachers teach kids to communicate and interrelate with one another. So absolutely. And kids, no matter the age, they can sit in Socratic seminar circle to talk about text. They can sit in a circle to talk about community. They can do it. Little kids are quite capable.
Absolutely. I just came from a conference, the IIRP. People are familiar with the International Institute of Restorative Practices. Well, it's one of the big restorative organizations in the United States. And I went to a few presentations about doing restorative practices starting in kindergarten. So that was, it is possible. And New York is going to start it here. Let's get another question, sister, over here, and then...
Carolyn, you talked about getting everyone to do the work. So can you just explain what does that actually look like?
A lot of work. Yes, never ending and a lot of work. And going back to a question you'd asked about the teachers really buying in. So first, it is about that buy-in. But even once they have, it's the, sure, I believe in this. This is how students learn best. I understand adverse childhood experiences. I'm with it. We're going to be nice to them. But then someone wrongs you, and you want something done about it. And so it was about patience, too. So part of that was every one of my principal's bulletins, every one of our morning meetings, we always talked about who we are and what this place is and if this is not a good fit. And so we had conversations like that a lot. But then a lot of it was about me investing time and money in training. I went to every single training that I brought into anybody else first. We spent a year really getting it together, and the next year we would roll it out. We had a lot of circles and opportunities to talk about what does it mean to be an advisor. We had opportunities to talk about what does it mean to shift the way we practice. And so a lot of time spent on really training people up. The challenge is what Brady had mentioned, once you get there and then years pass and people come in and they're like, oh, this is just the way things are here, but don't understand how you got there. If they don't know the story of how you came to be, what challenges, what decisions were made, then they just sort of adopt whatever practices they see at a very superficial level and don't know the why of it. And then you find yourself having to start over again. And so a lot of time goes into that. But it's about making sure that training, and I always pay for coaching. Coaching is huge. I think both, so, yeah.
Let's go to Lara.
I would also add that just like the students, I think the peers can be very powerful when it comes to transforming the community. So, you know, once you have that core group on your staff who can really be leaders in this, I mean, it's just much more powerful. So for us, we started with a very small group, and they were experimenting, and then they shared out at a staff meeting with students and talked about the impact that it had had over them over the course of the year. And that created some more buy-in. And then eventually we kind of had critical mass, and more people they were like, what is this? Like, we want to go to trainings. And that, again, takes time, but that was much more powerful than me ever saying, like, I think we should do this, right? So any take.
I just want to add the trauma and the secondhand trauma felt like a really important piece of it. So one, having everyone read books about trauma and understanding why the students were having the experiences they're having, and then how much time it would take for those things to change, that your brain needs to rewire itself. It's not going to happen because you have one circle. But then also, then I think our teachers were like, oh, it's my fault because our kids are dealing with trauma and I must be the bad person. I should leave teaching. And instead being like, you are also experiencing trauma. It may be a different kind of a trauma, but the trauma stewardship books, like all these books about understanding that we as the person who are dealing with the trauma that the kids are bringing are having our own traumatic experiences, and that our teachers need the social workers and support as much as our kids do, and that all of this is connected. So I thought that was a very kind of academic way to approach it, as in addition to all the other stuff.
And I mean, in some of our schools, we've, the restorative coordinator who came in from the outside organization, one of the first things that they did was establish a circle Friday afternoons or something like that before you hit the bar or something in order to talk about, you know, self-care. Do a yoga class during lunch twice a week, something like that, so you build self-care in to the staff to staff.
I just want to add one more thing to
Add
that.
one more thing, and we'll take two more questions.
So the other part of it too, though, was, and going back to conversations a lot of people have had, because it's about community and relationships, it wasn't always just we're talking with these words that are restorative and transformative and all the lingo that goes with it. Sometimes it was every year we have a kickball tournament, particularly when it gets stressful, and so we call it that. And so staff goes out and plays kickball, which nobody is good at. And so it's a lot of fun to do, but you build community that way, and then once you've bonded in that way, now you can talk about the issues that you're having with rolling out whatever's there. And so we did a lot of that too. We went bowling together, and it turns out our secretary is an amazing bowler, and the rest of us are not, right? And so like things like that we do together on purpose, so that then you can have those really difficult conversations around those other pieces too.
All right. People do not, we got stuff for you up here. All right. Don't leave. Hello. So you want to take another question or two? Yes. We have lunch. We have lunch. So that's why we have time to sit around. Okay, young man.
What topic do students talk about in restorative circles? When they leave.
That they're leading. Okay, right. Not about an incident or something.
I would say that a lot of times it depends on what's happening in the community or things that they're noticing, patterns, things that might be happening outside. You know, particularly in our community right now, there's a lot of talk about immigration and what it feels like to be afraid. We have a large undocumented community, so our circles are a place where students can connect with each other and talk about how they're feeling and talk about ways to get support. So a lot of our students are leading circles around that topic right now.
Final question.
I was just going to add, I think that circles tend to go deep fast. And it can be hard if some topics are sensitive. I mean, I think probably everybody here has been in a circle where they've cried. Everyone here has probably hugged everyone else in the circle, whether they knew them at the start or not. I mean, they really are a powerful emotional tool. But because of that, they also can, they can sometimes touch on things that are open things that are challenging. And so when we work with students in designing town meetings or circles or other topics and prompts, We just acknowledge that. We don't redirect away from that. But we just acknowledge that and then make sure we have supports in place in case students are triggered.
Final question, young lady.
So many conflicts and so much pain and students and educators' lives are faced in different forms of social oppression, whether it be racism or sexism, homophobia, transphobia. How do you do any educating of staff and young people to help them develop deeper understandings of those forms of social oppression?
Great question. Who did I see? Everyone's nodding their head, but who wants to talk? Who wants to talk? Okay. The answer is yes. You must, well, you have to do it. You have to talk in circles. I mean, in your school, I know, in particular, I came to visit Lara's school, and her student circle keepers, 11th and 12th graders mostly, but other grades, they wanted to know who I was. They looked on my Facebook page with my permission, so they can make a circle that would deal with who I was about. So, you know, so you can say, oh, he fights against racism, he does this, he does that. So you have to talk about, why are we doing this? It's to break the school to prison pipeline. It's to stop the suspensions of our black and brown kids. You know, that's what we're doing this for. So we have to, you know, talk about it. That's part of the education. And that's easiest to do right in the classroom. You got a history class. Hello, the history of America, a little bit racist, a little bit sexist, a little bit everything is. So, of course, you got to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, thank you. We got stuff for you over here. Please come.